Welcome to the Catholic After Party, your place for post-church snack time conversation. I am Alessandro Durante. The idea of transubstantiation is an idea that is fundamental to the Catholic faith. Transubstantiation is something that happens during a Catholic Mass where the bread and wine used for communion become the body and blood of Jesus Christ. The Pew Research Center in 2019 surveyed Catholics and found that 7 in 10 Catholics believe that the bread and wine used at communion is symbolic, either because they didn't know about transubstantiation, they think that this is what the Church teaches about the Eucharist, or just generally they are unsure about what they should believe in. This is a big question on many people's minds, especially with myself, and many of my friends and other students as well. I'm here with Father Raph to help us understand this super important concept. Hello, Father Raph.
Hi, Alessandro.
So, when you receive the Eucharist at Mass, is it body, blood, bread, or wine?
Definitely body, blood, soul, and divinity. That's what we believe.
So, what is this concept of transubstantiation?
And this is a very interesting question for many people. You hear the word, sometimes people kind of scoff at it or roll their eyes. But before we get to the actual concept itself, I think it's important for us to recognize that the reason why the things we believe matter is because they give us contact with Jesus, right? So the best way to describe it is the faith is a reality. And from that reality, we have like our conceptual understanding, so which transubstantiation will be one of them. And then things are formed into like creed statements or things in the catechism. So it's a concept, it's a way of trying to understand a reality, but we must never lose sight of the reality. And so with many things in our faith, it only gets explained later when there's kind of problems around it. So I don't have my history textbook with me, but there was this guy, I think his name was Berengarius, which is a cool name. I don't know if they called him Gary for short.
His name was Baron?
Berengarius, Berengarius, I think, or maybe it's ER. Anyways, it just around this time, it's like kind of year 1000, around the kind of Middle Ages. Anyways, and then they started having some questions about like, okay, is Jesus present in the Eucharist? How is he present? Stuff like that. It's as a result of these things that this concept of transubstantiation came about as a way to explain things, right? Now, it's a little different from just any kind of theological explanation, because theological explanations are just things that help us to understand things. But this has actually been adopted by the Church as something authoritative. So you will find actually the term transubstantiation in the Catechism. So it's not just a theological opinion or something that's perhaps helpful, but it's actually part of our faith.
So is this something that it has existed since the beginning of Christianity?
The explanation, no, definitely not. And that's why I kind of opened with the importance of recognizing this is a reality. And it's just when we had to try to explain it because there was, some misunderstandings or controversies going on, then these things kind of get brought up. So for example, like the word in the Nicene Creed, which we don't hear too often at Mass in Canada, but, consubstantial with the Father, like that word consubstantial is nowhere found in Scripture, right? Not that it's therefore irrelevant. But the thing is, sometimes certain concepts are helpful, just like language, for safeguarding our access to the reality. Does that kind of make sense there?
Yeah, it's very philosophical.
Yeah, very philosophical. Let's make this a lot more real. So
yeah, how do we ground ourselves and try to understand what's really happening at Mass?
Exactly. So the term transubstantiation is basically talking about using, actually, it has to be a little bit philosophical because it's using a philosophical framework. So this idea...
Substance, right?
Exactly, substance, right? So substance and accident. These are the two words that you'll find. A substance is the kind of thing that something is. So what kind of thing are you and I?
We're humans.
That's right. We are not cats or birds or trees, right?
Be a lion, that'd be cool.
All right. But what color lion would you be?
Like Simba?
Okay, because I think there's also white lions, isn't that right?
I don't know.
No, I know there's white
Is that
tigers.
like in the Arctic tundras? I feel like that'd be tigers.
No. Anyways, but the point is, you can tell me what a cat is or a lion is, but there's variations among lions, right? But somehow they're all still lions. So those variations are things that we call accidents, not like, whoops, I made a mistake, but accidental things are not essential to the kind of thing that it is. So for humans, like eye color, hair color, height, right? Skin color, these things. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay, so normally we encounter substances. So you only ever encounter a human through their accidents, right? Doesn't matter what their skin color is, they're going to have skin color. Doesn't matter what their eye color is, they're going to have eye color. Doesn't matter what their height is, they'll have some sort of physical dimensions, right?
Gotcha. So that accident is kind of what you encounter physically, but that doesn't change the humanity.
Right. It's equally that the substance you're encountering is human, right? Human nature.
Okay.
But we only ever encounter it through the accident. So it's not like this kind of, some philosophers got stuck on this in the modern period. They're like, well, I've never seen a substance on its own. It's like, well, yeah, because we don't. Now, with those concepts in mind, understanding substance is a kind of thing something is, and accidents are these, you want to say, the characteristics that we encounter, but are not essential. It's not like only humans above a certain height are human, right? So what happens is normally when we experience change, the substance remains the same, but the accidents change. Let's say like leaves changing color, right?
Okay.
Still the same leaf, but the color changes in the fall, right?
Okay. Right.
Or
So
height.
like when I get older,
Yeah,
my hair might turn white or gray.
exactly. And will
So
you
my
still be
accidents is changing, but I'm still Ale.
Exactly, right? And when you were born, you were a different physical size than you are now, but you're still Ale, right?
Yes.
Same thing with me. So normally in the natural world, we see things as substance remains the same, but the accidents are changing. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay. Now, transubstantiation is an attempt to explain how something somehow remains the same, because if nothing remains the same, it's not a change, it's just a replacement, right? Because like, let's say I turned into a lion, which would be pretty cool. Okay. If you became a lion, Ale, like how would it still be you?
Interesting. So I could still be a lion if, let's say there's like a spiritual realm, like a non-material part of myself.
Sure. Which is somehow
I could still have a different
lion.
accident using kind of like your rationalization. I can still have different accidents. So I can still have different, because as a lion, like I'll just have different ways that I look, right?
Sure.
I'll just
But
have different hair color.
How will we know it's you?
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Like by the way I talk, by the way I walk, personality.
I'm not sure I would hang around because the lion might like claw me.
Roar.
So, anyways, the
I
point
don't
is
know
this,
if you'd understand lion roars.
right? Maybe you could like trace out the Catholic After Party logo, and I'd be like, oh, it's Ale. Okay, the point is that in order for something to actually be a change and not a replacement, there must be something which remains the same, right? In order for us to recognize that the lion is still you, there must be something that was in you from before that's in you now as lion.
Okay. So I wouldn't be able to be a lion?
Well, let's leave that for another podcast.
Okay.
Anyways, so that's the normal kind of change that we see. So the substance remains the same, but the accidents change. That's how we know it's the same thing and not complete replacement. In transubstantiation, just working with this concept, right? Unlike every other change that we see, the accidents are the part that remains the same, but the substance changes. So the accidents, the characteristics or qualities we encounter of the bread and wine, they remain the same, but what they are, bread and wine, are actually completely replaced by the presence of Jesus Christ, his body and blood.
Can you say that again?
Okay. So normally we see a change happen. The substance, the kind of thing that it is, remains the same, but then the characteristics change, right? Leaf color, eye color, hair color, height, etc., right?
All right.
In transubstantiation, it's the other way around. The kind of thing that it is changes while the characteristics remain the same. So it still looks like bread and wine, but the kind of thing that it is no longer bread and wine. It's the body and blood of Christ.
Okay. So the accidents is staying the same, which is the bread and
The characteristics or qualities or forms, as
yeah.
they call it.
And that's why you can still look at the Eucharist that was bread and wine and still say that it's changed because the substance is changed, not the accidents or the way it looks. That helps. Okay, that helps understand a little bit.
And it's important to understand this is a mystery of faith, right? Like I often say to First Communion classes, I say, look, when you saw Jesus walking around on earth, what would he have looked like?
He would look human.
Yeah, like a Jewish man, right? Would he have a halo? Would he have like special robes?
Some transfiguration imagery might say so.
Okay. But aside from the transfiguration,
Probably not.
No, right? So here is what looks like it has all the characteristics of an ordinary Jewish man, but he is actually, who is he actually?
God.
Exactly, right? It takes faith to recognize that. And did everyone recognize that?
No.
No. Okay. And just in a similar way, it takes faith to recognize that the Eucharist, after the consecration, still looks like ordinary bread and wine, just like Jesus still looked like a normal human being. Jesus was God, and the Eucharist is Jesus. You see, it takes this exact same faith to believe both. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. And so sometimes, I mean, with transubstantiation, again, like it is a mystery. The point is that we really receive, Jesus really becomes present in a way that, let's say, if you closed your eyes and you're sitting across, maybe sitting in the tabernacle, across the tabernacle in church, right? It'd be no difference than if Jesus was sitting there. It's just that the characteristics through which we encounter it are those of bread and wine.
Now, what?
Mm-hmm.
I understand, okay, based on that kind of philosophical explanation, I understand how the Eucharist is God.
Yeah.
But for people who are still skeptical about
Sure.
that, what would you kind of what would you say to them to help them understand it even further?
Sure. I mean, I guess I would say, like, I wouldn't start with the Eucharist to begin with, right? Like, there was a time actually where people who were not fully initiated Christians were actually dismissed from the liturgy. If you've ever seen like RCIA, perhaps in your home parish, some places do it. I don't prefer it, but they would do that kind of as a way of reliving, the early days of the church. But yeah, like only people who believed in the Eucharist could stay for the Eucharistic prayer. That's what it was in the very beginning. Okay. It just shows that we wouldn't just talk about the Eucharist in general, right? Because like, in a sense, like who cares? Unless you already are interested in Jesus and already trying to understand what he's trying to say and engage in this relationship with him. And so like, because it really comes down to, for example, John 6, that's this big discourse where Jesus talks about the Eucharist, right? And even people who were trying to follow him, they said, this is hard to believe, who can accept it? And it says, and many stopped following him that day. And so what it comes down to is this only really matters if you're trying to follow Jesus. Like for me, I say, look, if there was someone who knew they were going to die the next day and they invited you to like spend that last evening with them, do you think the thing they might say to you would be important?
Yes.
Yeah, right? So like, what did Jesus tell his disciples at the Last Supper to do?
Take and eat with him.
Do this in memory
of me, dog.
Right?
Yeah.
He didn't say like, go and write the Bible or like, go and like preach the word. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
He said, do this.
Do this in memory of me.
What's this?
Well, there's a lot of thises because they all follow Jesus.
At the Last Supper.
But at the Last Supper, it would be referring to the Eucharist, kind of sharing a meal together.
Well, not just a meal, like what he just did, which would have been really shocking. I mean, if someone said this is my body, they're like, what are you talking about? Right?
Yes.
But he had already prepared them for that earlier in the Gospels, like the John 6 discourse, right? So they had heard about it. They didn't really understand because remember Jesus says, will you also go away? And Peter says, to whom shall we go? You have the words of everlasting life, right? So it's like, Lord, I don't really understand what you mean there, but I'm not going to abandon you, right? And then in time, you're going to help me understand. And that's what happened, right? I kind of see, it's very beautiful, like in, to draw that connection. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So there must have been the beginning, like, oh, okay, maybe this is what he was talking about, right? I mean, there's a lot happening. They didn't have time to, silently reflect, because after that, they go to the Garden of Gethsemane, Jesus gets arrested, right? But the point is that at the Last Supper, Jesus said, do this in memory of me. And it's kind of like, why would Jesus say that and not other things, right? Not like go tell other people about me, right? But because through this, he can be present to us until the end of time. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's a very beautiful thing. I think that's why, and Jesus even says, I have greatly desired to eat this supper with you. It's almost like Jesus he can't wait to institute the Eucharist so that he can be with us in a lasting way. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we'll wrap it up here, Father.
Yeah.
Thank you, Father, for helping us understand a little bit more about transubstantiation. That's all we have for you today. Take care, and God bless, and have a great week. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Catholic After Party. Today's music is produced by Kevin MacLeod at incompetech.com. Thank you for making your chart Funky Chunk available for use. It is licensed under the Creative Commons 3.0. If you have any questions that you would like to be featured on future episodes, please follow at Catholic Afterparty on Instagram and submit questions via our link tree.